the worst thing your family did to test someone you were dating? When my boyfriend Killian hit his 90-day sobriety mark and I thought we'd finally made it, because that's when my family promised they'd start treating him like a real person again. You see, up until this point, they'd been suspicious as hell about his recovery. So even having him eat dinner with us without them counting the silverware afterward felt like progress. I thought the worst part was behind us, until I learned about their version of trust-building exercises Killian had been using for 3 years before we met. Rowan, pills, whatever he could find to numb the pain of losing his mom to cancer. When he got clean, he did it the right way. Rehab, meetings, sponsor, the whole program. My family acted supportive at first, but I should have known better. It started during our weekly family dinners. My dad would leave a beer on the counter by accident and watch Killian like a hawk. My mom would take her prescription painkillers right in front of him, counting them out slowly. When Killian wouldn't even glance at the pills, they'd nod at each other like they'd proven some point. We have to make sure he's really committed, my sister Jenny told me one night. You can't trust addicts until you know they can resist temptation. I wanted to tell Jenny that recovery doesn't work that way, that trust isn't something you test with traps. But I also remembered how relieved I felt when Killian chose me over the drugs those first few months. So I stayed quiet and told myself that if he was really clean, these tests wouldn't matter. But what they did to him over the next few weeks still makes me sick. The exercises got more elaborate. They'd invite him to family game night and leave a bottle of whiskey right next to his chair. During movie nights, they'd put on shows about addiction and pause to make comments about people who relapse. My uncle brought cocaine to my cousin's birthday party and set it on the bathroom counter where only Killian would see it. And instead of getting angry, Killian did something that made me feel even worse about staying silent. He thanked them. When they'd place pills next to his coffee cup, he'd move them away and say, "I appreciate you helping me stay strong." When they'd talk about addiction like he wasn't sitting right there, he'd nod and agree that trust had to be earned. I watched him find a baggie of pills in his jacket pocket after Sunday dinner. Instead of confronting anyone, he quietly threw them away and asked my dad if they could talk about his progress in recovery. It was one of those situations where you know what's happening is wrong, but calling it out feels like taking sides against your own family. Then came what they called the final test. I was getting ready for bed when I heard shouting from downstairs. I ran down to find Killian in the kitchen, shaking and holding an empty water bottle. My whole family stood around him in a circle like some twisted intervention. "How could you?" my mom demanded, pointing at a small bag of white powder on the counter. "We trusted you. We let you into our home." "I didn't," Killian stammered. "I've been clean for 4 months. I don't know where this came from." "It was in your backpack," Jenny said coldly. "We found it when we were looking for your phone charger." I stared at the scene, my heart pounding. Killian looked broken, confused, desperate. Then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The baggie was sitting in the exact spot where my mom had been cutting vegetables an hour earlier, the same spot where she'd been standing when Killian went to the bathroom. "This is what happens when we give addicts second chances," my dad said, his voice full of disgust. "You can take the junkie off the street, but you can't take the street out of the junkie." Killian's shoulders collapsed as he stared at the drugs he'd never touched. "Please," he whispered. "I can take a test right now. Call my sponsor. I'll go back to meetings every day." "You'll go back to rehab is what you'll do," my mom snapped. "And this time you'll earn our trust properly. No more easy rides." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them they'd planted those drugs, but my own family was staring at me, waiting to see whose side I'd choose. Killian looked at me with desperate eyes. "You believe me, right? You know I wouldn't throw away everything we built." The room went silent. Everyone waited for my answer, but then I heard my sister's phone buzzing. She glanced at it and smirked. "Great timing," she whispered to my mom. "The rehab center has an opening tonight." That's when I realized this wasn't a test of Killian's sobriety. It was a setup from the beginning, and my family had been planning his downfall since day one. Killian was gone within the hour. No appeals, no second chances, just complete exile disguised as getting help. I found him that night sitting on the rehab center steps, crying, actually sobbing. This man who'd fought through withdrawal, who'd rebuilt his entire life, who'd stayed clean through months of their torture, was finally shattered. "You're the only one who ever treated me like I was worth saving," he said through tears. "You deserve to know what this really means." He pulled out his phone and showed me a text from his sponsor. A job offer. A real career opportunity with a company that hired people in recovery. The position he'd been working toward for months. "The job requires 6 months clean," he said, his voice breaking. "I was 2 months away from changing my life, from proving I could be the man you deserved." He stood up, shouldering his rehab bag. "Your sister knew about the job. That's what she said when she planted the drugs, that I'd never be good enough for you anyway." The rage that hit me was unlike anything I'd ever felt. I'd spent months watching my family destroy the person I loved most. I knew someone had to fight back against their twisted version of love. I just never imagined that someone was going to be me. Full story on channel linked below.